Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's live lesson. Today, we have been asked to look at a topic which comes up several times in your assignments and can also crop up on exams, for all I know. And that is how to write a news article. Okay, some people find it quite difficult, some people don't. And some people are not quite sure exactly how they should go about it. So let's take a look now. We'll share a document. And this is it. Right. Whoopsie. Right. How to write a news article. Right. The first thing you need to do or to think about is to think about research. How do I do research for a news article? First of all, you must decide what you're going to write about. If you've been given a task, i.e. in an assignment, make sure you understand it properly before even starting out, okay? If you're unsure what you're going to write about, check with your teacher. Just send a little message saying, is this the right item? Because the number of lovely articles I've got on certain things is amazing, as opposed to what the task should be, but you're only going to get 0 if you don't follow that task. Right, so first, check what you're going to write about. Secondly, maybe you've got some sort of previous experience in that topic. And if you do, this is when you have to be careful to avoid bias. In other words, you've got preconceived ideas, because maybe you had a good experience with something, maybe you had a bad experience, and that could come into your writing if you're not careful. But remember, you have to be neutral. You are like Switzerland, okay? So even if you've got a strong opinion of something, positive or negative, you have to forget all about that when you're writing a report. Next thing, always begin your notes. You do research notes before you do anything. Be with details and be systematic in your research, because at all costs, you have to avoid getting the facts wrong. If you do that, and you actually were a journalist, the newspaper could be sued, and of course you would be fired, and maybe you'd be sued in your personal capacity. So that could be a very costly mistake if you get any facts wrong. So whatever research you're doing, make sure the facts are correct. That's the first thing. How do you do your research? Use other articles and books on the same topic so that you get a full understanding of the subject. If you don't do that, then it's like the blind leading the blind. You know, I don't know very much about it, but I'm going to write a very learned article about it. So that's a no-no. Do your research, use your brain, be smart. What else can you do other than looking at the subject? You try to find background information, perhaps, on the people you're going to be writing about or the organization you're going to be writing about. So you would look that up online or in articles or in any books. And the next thing you have to do, interview any people whom you think might be able to give you further information or perhaps quotes about the event or whatever you're writing about, the event or topic you are writing about. Assertions or quotes, they need to be attributed to someone. You can't just put a quotation that nobody said. So you have to say, according to John Smith, etc., and then put in the quote. Information that cannot be attributed to a reliable and appropriate source is not suitable for publication. So, in other words, you can't just make it up, all right? You're going to be found out. Again, the same thing. You could get sued. The newspaper would be sued. And that would be the end of your career. Right. And when you're getting, this is still on your notes, don't forget. So make sure that you get name, someone's full name, the date you spoke to them, and his contact information, address, email address, etc. So you've got all the correct information at your fingertips. These are known as your sources. Okay? When you interview people, that's your source. Okay? And then sometimes there is no one to speak to, but you want to try and add an element of truth to what you're writing. So maybe you can dig up some experts in the field if you have to. You'll have seen that particularly on TV news articles. We're going to talk to our economics expert to discuss the question. Okay, so there you've got that source as well. Okay. Now, this is just to do with all the notes on your research. What you can do to start planning an online report is look in your student book on page 48, chapter 2, topic 6, which is entitled Planning an Online News Report. And then you work through the questions 1 to 5, because by doing that, it gives you a good idea of what you have to do. Some people have never written a news report before, but you're going to be writing lots of them throughout your academic career, let's call it. Okay. Right, so let's supposing you've done all your research and you want to start thinking about writing the article. Okay, the best way to structure a newspaper article, oh dear, don't worry, Noah, someone's just come in a bit late. The best way to structure a newspaper article is to first write an outline. Review your research and notes, and then jot down ideas into sections, which we're going to look at just now. And this is going to be your draft outline, okay? You've got to do this in order to get it all totally correct. Because remember, if this was real life, you would be getting sued by lawyers if anything is incorrect. Right. How do you divide your article into sections? Okay. Right. Let's take a look at that. The first thing you're going to look at is the headline. What is your story going to be called? What's it all about? You just draft one, and then if that's going to be suitable, you'll keep it. Maybe you'll come up with another one when everything's finished. So you keep the headline short and simple, but attention-grabbing if possible. For example, lion eats keeper. That's good enough for a headline, okay? What comes after the headline, straight under it, is something called a byline, which is basically the writer of the article. So you would have the headline, and underneath that, there's always a little byline to say who the author was, okay? The writer or author of this piece, right? Then what comes after that? The title and the byline. You've got something that's called a stand first, and another name for that is also a lead sentence. Okay, stand first or lead sentence. Now, this is where you try to reel your reader in. You've got to hook your reader. You want them to read the rest of this article you've spent hours perfecting, okay? And the stand first is generally a summary of the story in one sentence if possible. Okay, one sentence, one. So in other words, it practically summarizes the whole story. If you can do that in one sentence, you're going to do a very good job. And this is the thing that helps readers decide if they want to read the rest of the story or not. Lion eats keeper What could we say about that? We could say keeper taunts lion. Taunts or teases the lion. Okay, so that could be your headline, lion eats the keeper. Then your stand first or lead sentence could be keeper taunts or teases the lion. And you'd be, if you were the reader, you'd be like, well, what on earth did he do to tease a lion? And why did he do it? What's wrong with him? Okay. Right, then we've got a little introductory paragraph. It doesn't really mention that in your book on page 25. It just says main paragraphs, but they still have to have a little introduction. And this sets the scene and summarizes who did what happened, where did it happen, and when. Okay, so because you have to assume no prior knowledge. You must assume your reader knows nothing about this. He's got no prior knowledge. That's why you have to set the scene for him. Okay? Sometimes you might even start with just a quotation, which lets the reader know who's involved and what they were thinking. Okay. And after that, you've got your little introduction that tells exactly what was happening. That's the facts. Then your main paragraph. Now that you've introduced the story, you put all the events that happen thereafter into the correct order, time-wise. Begin at the beginning, what happened then, what happened next, etc. So use the facts from your research and quotes from your interviewees to get on with the rest of this. Okay? Note the following. This is important. The article must not contain your personal opinions, as we said originally. You must be unbiased. Okay? Perhaps you're a vegan and you don't want to talk about animals, for example, but no, you can't bring that into your article. It must be unbiased. Now, here's another important thing. Try to always use active verbs wherever possible. Okay, not the passive. Because active verbs make things more interesting. They're happening right now. You don't want to write in the passive because then it becomes like a narrative. You don't want to write a narrative for a newspaper report. Okay. And finally, write in short, clear sentences without using any big, long words, because some of your readers may have different abilities. Some of them might not be so good with language and they won't understand big, long words, and that they say, I'm not reading that. It's got too many long words. Now, someone's just asked, how many paragraphs must we write? Well, usually your editor, or in other words, the task, will tell you we need X amount of words, between 200 and 250, and you know from your writing that that's 3 or 4 paragraphs. But it all depends what happens in the actual story, how many paragraphs you write. Let's continue looking at the notes. Note the following. In a news article, you typically put the most critical information at the beginning to ensure your reader sees the important details first. The reader then might be interested enough to read the whole article. Thereafter, you use your supporting information, facts, and/or quotes. Again, if you do quote anyone, you have to put their name and any other descriptive or pertinent information with the quote. Now, you might also have a few photos for your article, and you must always have a caption on a photo and the source acknowledged. Okay, so who took the photo? Where did it come from? That would be in very small print, obviously, but it must always have a caption so people understand. Right, paragraph-wise, Sometimes you only need 2 or 3 sentences in a paragraph, because as we said, people without a great language ability will not read more than that. Okay, look at this paragraph. It's got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. How many of you have actually read that in the meanwhile? Okay, so think about that. You might have quite a lot of short paragraphs. You can't really specify a number of them for a newspaper article. Yes, somebody said, also asking, can you get the live recording? Yes, you can. I think it's under live lessons. And you just look up the date and you can open it. Right, the last paragraph or conclusion for your article, you just generally write something that sums up the article in a few words. Maybe a carefully chosen quote to serve as an aide-memoire for the reader, and otherwise to make him remember again what it was all about. Maybe you could put a link to further information that your newspaper maybe has, or it could be some sort of restatement of the lead statement or stand first, but maybe put into other words. So in other words, like a paraphrase. Okay. So that's what you would write for your conclusion. So you'll see there's quite a lot of paragraphs, short paragraphs, because news articles don't have long paragraphs. It's only when they're writing a full narrative account of something you're going to see long paragraphs. Okay. And as you know, some people will be reading on paper, some people will be looking on their tablets or their phones or what have you. But again, going back to the student book, if you look at page 49, developing the skills to write the news report, and you should work through questions 6 to 11. You should also check direct speech, how it should be used for your quotations, how it should be punctuated on page 54, topic 8. And your assignment on the first news article you have to write, which some people have written and others haven't, you work through the topic and then you have to write one good deed every day. Okay, that's the title of your news report. Some people wrote other things because they didn't quite understand what they had to do, but that's what you need to do for that particular assignment. Right, let's just go back through that briefly to remind you. First thing you must do is research and keep a lot of notes on your article. Once you know what you're writing about, have you had any previous experience? Get it out of your mind, or maybe not, depending what you're writing about. Always begin your notes with a detailed and systematic research so you do not get the facts wrong. That's very important. As we said, if you were a journalist, you could be sued, the newspaper could be sued, you would be fired, nobody would touch you with a barge pole, so that would be the end of your career. Where do you look for research? Online, other articles and books on the same topic, so that finally you fully understand that particular topic. Maybe you have to write about special people or a special organization. You have to find out background information on that. Is it a shady organization? Is it an honest, upstanding, trustworthy organization? Is it a government department? You must dig up everything you can on that. Then another job for a journalist would to be interview people that give you information, quotations, etc. Or you can dig up some experts in the field. Right, for your assignment per se, look at chapter 2, topic 6, and work through the questions there on page 48. A restatement, sorry, somebody's asked me a question. What is a restatement? Is when you say the same statement that you had at the beginning on your stand first or lead sentence, but you don't say it in the same words. You paraphrase it, which we discussed the other day, and we put it in different words, maybe back to front or using synonyms. So your restating uses synonyms. Start writing the article, you do a draft. What sections does it get divided into? The headline, the byline, and the stand first or lead sentence. That is actually a statement as well. Okay, so you're going to restate that. Keeper taunts lion. You could say as your conclusion, the lion was definitely tormented by the keeper. So we're trying to say it back to front, just as a paraphrase. Okay. Then you've got the usual introduction, setting the scene for the whole article. What happened, who, what, where, and when. And if we're looking at one good deed every day, we're actually not looking at real facts here. You're being asked to imagine and create the person that set up this whole organization called something like One Good Deed Every Day. What's that person's name? Why did he set up the organization anyway? And what's the benefit of it? In our case, looking at teenagers that do good deeds. Okay, your little introduction, 2 or 3 lines, summarizes who, what, where, and when, just as we've discussed. Okay. Then your main paragraph, put events that happen. How many people did good deeds? What were the good deeds? Talk to people about, interview your people. Why was that a good deed? Did it really help you? Did you think the teenager did a good job? Yes, you're going to invent or create some quotations for people, okay, that are talking about that. And remember the few notes, no personal opinions, write in the active voice, not passive with your verbs. Write short, clear sentences without using any big, long words, okay? Because you might have 12-year-old readers, you might have 100-year-old readers, who knows? You've got to cater for everyone if you possibly can. Right? And of course, you obviously go through things as they occur. Who came on the website first? Who did the good deed? What country did he come from? Because remember, this is for teenagers from all over the world. So you could perhaps mention a couple of different countries. Some countries need different things done for different people. So think about that. Maybe you're an Eskimo and you need your whale blubber cut up, and some teenager could come and help you with that. Okay? Use your imagination. In this case, you can. Okay, and then your conclusion, as we said, something that sums up the article in a few words, maybe a quotation. Teenagers are fantastic. This shows that teenagers have done a great job all over the world, and they're not just people who sit on their cell phones all day. Maybe you want to put a link in there to further information, and as we said, otherwise you could try to put something like your stand first or your lead sentence, but you would just paraphrase it and say it in a different way. Okay, and we looked at some of the student book things that you could look at. Developing skills, check out direct speech. Some people still cannot punctuate direct speech, believe it or not. They don't know you've got to write a comma, open inverted commas, start with a capital letter, etc. Make sure you know that, because you're going to have to know that forever. So if you forever want to get 0, particularly in exams where you say, please punctuate the following, throwing away marks, no good. Right, then your assignment itself is on page 56, topic 9. Work through all the questions and then write one good deed every day. An imaginary exercise, but you know exactly what to do because we've looked at the correct way of tackling a news article. Here's some writing mistakes to be avoided. Do more research than you have to. Have more than enough relevant background information, quotes from sources or stats to write a decent article. Because maybe when you send it for checking if it was real to your editor, they would say, take that out, get something else in there. Hopefully you've got the stuff at your fingertips and you get it done quickly, because there's always deadlines with newspapers. Use as many quotes as you can. Quotes enliven your news story, as the interviewees can be quirky and interesting, very eccentric people. And maybe there's something that's totally way out there, and wow, that would be interesting to put in there, catch people's interest, to make them read my news report. Very important again, get the full name and details of your sources, maybe even a brief biographical information if it's pertinent, or you could find yourself slammed with a libel case. Yes, don't worry about that. Do not make sweeping statements. Always make sure you have statistics to back up what you are talking about. Otherwise, your readers won't trust you, and they won't trust the newspaper or the online, whatever you're writing about. Another thing, always write in the third person. Articles must be objective, impartial, and fair, with no personal opinions. Keep your paragraphs short. 2 to 3 sentences are generally sufficient for your readers. Okay, so short little paragraphs, and I think that's about it. And I believe we're about to run out of time. So if you want a copy of this, get it on the Zoom chat or send me a CambriLearn chat, and I will send you this so that you've got it forever, because you've got a couple of news articles to write in F1. You're going to have a couple in F2. So that's fine. So let's just stop the share at the moment. Well, I hope that's helped you a bit. And as I say, all you need to do is send me a note and I will send that paperwork to you. Then you got it to look at, and surely you can't go wrong. Hey, anyway, right everyone, well, thanks for joining in.